Carlos Correa goes home. The Minnesota Twins have sent Carlos Correa to the Houston Astros in exchange for TBD. We don't know the return yet. However, we do know that Correa is back on the Astros. What in the world? This came out of absolutely nowhere, it seemed like. When you looked at all of the rankings on various websites of like best players to get moved at the deadline, no Correa, like not on the radar. Now, it's worth saying the overall impact of this deal versus just the total shock value of this deal, there's a bit of a difference. Like, this is sexier and more flooring than it is going to move the needle of the rest of the season, in my personal opinion. But Jordan, take me through your reaction of seeing this.
I mean, I know, I think I sort of agree with the sentiment that you're getting at, because there are some other very impactful players that have been traded and maybe still will be traded in the next 20 minutes. But I think this is part of what makes the Carlos Correa story so interesting. There's so many basic levels of it, which is just like, oh my God, he's back on the Astros. I mean, that is a shocking thing. This was not someone that we ever expected to really be traded again for any reason, let alone back to Houston, when you consider what it has taken this season to require the Astros to need Carlos Correa for any reason, right? Isaac Paredes is having this serious injury that is obviously much worse than I think we thought at the time. It seems like he's going to be out for the season. He was having a good season since he came over from the Cubs in that Kyle Tucker deal. Jeremy Pena also having a marvelous season, and he's still coming back from injury. It sounds like Carlos Correa is going to play third base. But I want to get back to the premise that you kind of laid out there of how much is this going to change the season. And the reason that I totally understand you are saying that is because you pull up Carlos Correa this year and you see that he has a 704 OPS. You see that he's slugging 386. You see that he's a well below average hitter. And you say, okay, well, how big of a difference is this guy going to make? And yet, this is what is so bizarre about Correa at this stage in his career, is he is essentially in his 4 years in Minnesota alternated looking like an MVP candidate and looking like a completely overpaid, not superstar whatsoever. And injuries have been a part of that, but he has played a lot of games this year. I don't know. I mean, maybe he just turns it back on. I mean, he's mostly been on the field this year. We know he's a marvelous postseason performer, and we know the Astros are clearly pushing to win another division title. We're going to talk about the Mariners a little bit later. They're pushing to kind of challenge them there, but I have no idea what to expect from Correa whatsoever. And now he's playing a position that I'm sure he can handle, but he has never played in his career, which will be third base.
And all of the underlying metrics back up the fact that he has been mediocre. This is not a case of a player being unlucky. He looks like something of a different player this year. Go back a year ago, though, and you're right. I mean, he was freaking awesome. Now, he was not healthy the entire season. He was 51% better than league average OPS plus in a half a season. Like, he was an awesome hitter. That has not been the case this year. This trade is shocking for like 85 different reasons and hilarious for 85 different reasons. But like, something that comes to my mind is, if I had told you a month ago that they would be trading for Correa, you would have said, to play where? Because they went out and got Isaac Paredes to play third. He was an all-star. Jeremy Pena took a huge step forward to become a borderline superstar at shortstop. So it's like, is he going to play second base? With those two guys getting hurt and now being out for maybe longer than we expected, Pena due back soon, there is a spot here for Carlos Correa. Now, obviously, the other thing this calls back is the Astros reacquiring Justin Verlander at the deadline a couple years ago. He departs in free agency, joins the Mets. Jim Crane, their owner of the Astros, feels like he's got his finger on the pulse here. He's like, hey, remember that guy? Yeah, he was great. And he goes and gets it.
And it seems like in this case, the relationship between Correa and Crane is even stronger than it ever was between Verlander and Crane, right? But this is the thing, and we're certainly going to talk about the Padres here in a little bit, and how what the Padres have done today, only one general manager would ever do, and that's AJ Preller. This kind of move is something that really only one owner would try and do, and that is Jim Crane. And so the stars had to align. So much weird stuff had to happen with Houston, and obviously so much weird stuff had to happen with Minnesota, who has had this incredibly disappointing run over the last two seasons. Now, this is the other part about this. We're talking about it because we don't know the return. We're not talking about this as some sort of superstar being traded for a haul of prospects. This is basically a salary dump, right? I mean, he is owed $90 million over the next 3 seasons after this one. When they signed that contract, Minnesota signed that contract with Correa, it was certainly out of character and in some ways encouraging, inspiring, wow, look at the Twins giving Carlos Correa all this money. It had some ups, it had some downs. But when you consider where they are as a franchise, where they are in their contention window, when you consider all the other pieces that they're selling off, you consider that they are a franchise literally for sale. It doesn't stun me that if the shocking opportunity arose to dump $90 million in future commitments, that they were like, yeah, I think we're going to do this.
I mean, turn the clock back for the Twins here to the 2023 postseason, and they win their first playoff series and first playoff game, right, in like a decade and change. They knock off the Blue Jays at home. Target Field's going crazy. I don't even think, Correa goes 2 for 3 in the clincher.
And then who do they play next round?
And who do they play next round? The Houston Astros, who knocked them out. And since then, it has just been a total descent into baseball sadness. And if you're a Twins fan, this is going to be a tough run. It does feel like they're just selling everything they possibly can to kind of get out from under all the money. I think over the last 48 hours, they've shed about $40 million worth of salary for this season, not to mention the money moving forward on Correa. Really remarkable stuff.
Yeah, and even recognizing that Correa has kind of been this volatile asset and volatile performer, you're looking at this roster now, and especially as they move off of Jhoan Duran, who we'll talk about later. And as far as I know, Joe Ryan has not been traded as we are talking right now. We'll see if they move any more relievers, Griffin Jacks. But this is just not a roster that looks remotely competitive anytime soon. And again, as I mentioned again, that they are about to be sold, perhaps they are really entering a rather dramatic transitional period, which for this franchise is pretty bleak.
So this news originally broken by Brian McTaggart of MLB.com, I believe, who said that he said that Carlos Correa has been reacquired, which is technically correct, but is hilarious phrasing because the acquiring that took place on the Astros' behalf was drafting him when he was 17 years old, first overall, all the way back in 2012 when we were in high school.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And this is the other part about the Correa story as we bring it back to Houston and then ultimately Minnesota. We're not going to go beat by beat of what happened that led up to him signing with the Twins and then signing back with the Twins, but it has been a wild ride of transactions for this guy. And not to mention all the stuff involved with Houston and the cheating scandal. Like there's so much involved in this guy's career, but this is another twist where it's just stunning. It's just stunning. And by the way, no matter how much money he's making, no matter how much exactly how good he's been this year, and the fact that he's slugging 386, like the Astros are probably going to be back in the postseason, and he's going to be with them one way or another. And I don't know what they do with Isaac Paredes next season. Like thinking about next year, who knows? But the point is the fact that we're going to be watching Carlos Correa in the postseason with the Astros again in 2025 is astonishing. And the Astros obviously have done some other stuff. It sounds like they still have some other stuff in the works, bringing in Jesus Sanchez. I like that move. Again, they are clearly trying to patch some holes that they have with all of these injuries. Maybe they still have a last move left in them before this deadline. But the Astros, they act in a very singular fashion. And I think this move is one hell of a reminder.
Man. And here's the other thing. Correa is still only 30. He's been in our lives for such a long time as a baseball character. He is 1 month older than Brent Rooker, who in some ways feels like he just showed up recently, like 5 minutes ago, right? Like Carlos Correa he still has time left. Now that means he has to stay on the field and be healthy, which he hasn't always done, but there is more time here, I think, than maybe you would expect given how long he's been in our lives and the amount of time he spent on the field.